Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Ramsey, and I'm the VP of Marketing at SYSPRO Canada. I'm pleased to welcome you to our live webinar, How to Improve Efficiency by Modernizing Your Warehouse. Today's session will be recorded, and everyone who registers will receive an email with a link to the on-demand version as well as a copy of today's presentation slides. The session today will run about 45 minutes, and we'll have time for questions at the very end. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them through the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console, and we'll get to them towards the end of the presentation. I think most of you are familiar with SYSPRO, but you may not know that it's been designed so that it interacts with other purpose-built solutions to increase the value of your solution. While your ERP is your system of record and SYSPRO specialization, our approach has always been to partner and integrate with other leading vendors who are experts in their respective fields. Our partners have deep functionality in their systems, and when integrated with SYSPRO, you can do some amazing things like manufacturing operations, document automation, data analytics, compliance automation, and what we'll be speaking about today, warehouse automation. I'd like to introduce you now to our presenters today, Garrett Lenson and Ryan Winicky. Garrett is the account manager and implementation specialist for riteSOFT. He wants to help manufacturers and distributors solve their business problems and sharpen their competitive edge. Garrett works with more than 200 customers each year to answer their technical questions and help them implement RiteScan. Garrett leverages his bachelor's degree in business administration to help customers streamline their operations to meet their key performance objectives. Ryan is the product manager at riteSOFT, where he helps customers and partners with the deployment of software solutions that automate and optimize warehouse manufacturing operations. He's a computer information systems and business admin graduate from Bemidji State University. Welcome, Garrett and Ryan. I'm going to pass this over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Now, to get started, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to create significant challenges for manufacturers across the globe, including supply chain disruption, staffing shortages, and rising prices for raw materials and increasing labor costs. Industry analysis recommend that manufacturers develop both short and long-term strategies that help them transform, gain a competitive advantage, and help create greater resiliency in the future. During this time of disruption, manufacturers without access to real-time information are at a significant competitive disadvantage. We see 4 important reasons to embrace a digital transformation strategy now in your warehouse. 1, to reduce inventory errors. 2, to save time and get improved inventory visibility. 3, to control warehousing costs. And 4, to increase customer and employee satisfaction. So Ryan, let's take a deeper look at some of these reasons.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Garrett, and welcome everyone. So as we kind of go in and tackle the first reason, which is focusing on accuracy, inventory errors and the need for improved inventory accuracy is more and more important with supply chain. The manual data entry is often going to result in incorrect inventory information or lags and frustration on both the part of your customers as well as the employees that you're trying to hold on to. On average, people are going to make mistakes when it comes to manual transactions, and these are the sorts of things that really lead to your inaccurate inventory levels, making you do unnecessary reorders and potential stockouts. And as we look at inventory, we're trying to do more with less with all of the supply chain challenges, so we really need to focus on these things. For manufacturers that are doing manual data entry, inventory errors are going to be coupled with all of the supply chain challenges that we're talking about. And when we look at some of the examples that really cause this, the first one that always comes to mind is from a receiving standpoint. When we're doing the just-in-time more and more today, you may receive a shipment that's unloaded and put away into inventory. However, if you're not capturing that data in real time, the paperwork's going to sit on someone's desk that was written on as to what was received, waiting to be entered into SYSPRO. But really the physical stock now has already been staged and issued to a specific job that needed to run that day. And the goal of real-time data capture is to match what's physically happening in the warehouse and immediately update the ERP system to reflect that. This is really what helps regain the employees' trust in the system when items are moved from one location to another, when they're able to see in real time what's happened and know where to go find a specific product without having to go on those constant scavenger hunts wondering where inventory is. A lot of people's big question is, how do we start to rebuild and regain the trust in your system's inventory accuracy if it's not good today? And really, one of the simplest answers to that is to capture inventory transactions in real time. That's what's going to get you there. The next sort of thing, as you're looking to go digital, is the utilization of barcode scanning and warehouse management solutions to help you validate inventory data and transactions in real time. So that means as you receive items, as you move items, as you pick items for orders, it's being reflected right then and there. It's not only going to improve your accuracy, but it also can help increase your efficiency and really help you narrow in and control those inventory costs. The data validation process really begins with the use of barcodes and label printing automation throughout your warehouse operations. That's where everything starts from. Barcodes are going to help you validate the different items like stock codes, locations, so that would be your bins or warehouses, lot numbers, serial numbers, as well as other items that you might need to collect. And this is what really helps improve the operator performance and picking accuracy. There's no more writing these things down. Using warehouse solution like RiteScan, what it does is it really forces those transactions to be validated right at the point where the physical movement or picking process might be occurring. And what this means is that if I scan a stock code that's not on the order, or it's the incorrect item, or it's the incorrect lot number that should be going out, the system's going to prevent me from picking that item right then and there. So if we take the simple example of you have two products that are very similar, but they're different stock codes. One's red and one is blue. In a manual process, the operator is simply going to go down the aisle, read the stock code label off of the racking or the product, look at the item quick, and then pull it from the bin. The operator is going to write down that they checked off the one that they needed to pick on the pick slip, and they picked the correct one and handed it in. But what actually happened in reality is they accidentally grabbed the blue one instead of the red one. If the operator to use an automated solution that validates this stock code in real time, it's going to stop that operator from picking the wrong item right then and there versus letting that issue go downstream. So that's where they would put the item back, grab the correct item, scan the correct item, and validate that against that. And that's really what prevents those mispicks from occurring. So when you look at this issue, there's a lot of different things to analyze with it. At a first glance, it doesn't maybe seem like that big of a deal, but a simple error like this is going to cause numerous downstream issues. Number one, your customer's unhappy, and the cost that it goes with to reconcile that issue costs you money. Number two is the inventory is now going to be off, not only on one item, but on two items. So it's going to say that you have one blue item left. However, you actually have zero because you shipped it out to the customer. And now you have inventory discrepancies with both of those items. So on the flip side, now the system or SYSPRO will actually say that you have zero red items left, which is going to lead you to order additional inventory, taking up more space until you can reconcile that issue. Really, the bottom line with this is it creates a cycle of wasted time, effort, and money, and it's all due to a simple mistake that could have been prevented. And the number of times that a user can do this every single day really can cause havoc in some people's warehouses. So the next sort of thing that we're looking at is really about time and visibility. When you're manually receiving or picking items, that lack of real-time information can really rack up a lot of wasted time. Plus, you really can't see what's truly available or happening in your warehouse or trust your ERP. When your customer service reps or sales reps aren't confident about what's in the system due to data entry time lags or data integrity, or what's being received or being picked in real time, it really causes a lot of issues. So perhaps as we look at this sort of scenario, your customer service or sales rep is going to get an order that they're wanting to put into the system, they're going to call out to the warehouse to see if they truly have availability for that item so they can truly tell the customer when they're going to be getting it. Warehouse staff, we all know how busy they are, so they're not going to be answering the phone very easily, and the phone tag starts playing out in this situation where the operator is going to get the message. They're finally going to call back. They're going to tell them what they think they have after they go look in the warehouse, and it's just a constant cycle. When this happens multiple times throughout the day, it causes a lot of downtime, or not downtime, but wasted time. And you really want to skip this telephone game by simply scanning barcodes as you receive the items in and moving to real-time inventory. It helps to rebuild that integrity in the system that, yes, the ERP is actually up to date. The other thing that you're really wanting to look at eliminate the waste of time is the stack of papers. The stack of paper slips that need to be entered from the warehouse where somebody wrote down what they picked or what they moved, and it's sitting on Bob's desk today to be entered into the ERP, but he's out sick. Now what happens in that sort of process flow? That data entry time lag can really be eliminated if you're scanning those transactions right where they occur in the warehouse, taking that extra step of manually having to enter the data into the system. The last sort of situation, which I think is one of the most important actually, is barcode scanning can really help you reduce the bottleneck during the stock take process. One of the fastest ways I talk to customers about getting a return on their investment and eliminating wasted time is within the stock take process. If you're still currently performing your stock takes manually, you'll probably be able to relate to this very well. But currently, a typical stock take process may be that you have your paper count tickets, which operators are going to write down the item that they counted, the lot number, and the quantity. And this process is actually quite simple. It's not complex. But the challenge often arises when the person responsible for entering those count tickets has to manually compile that data into spreadsheets or perform that stock take capture through SYSPRO by manually entering the data from all of those count tickets that get handed in. This process really can create a bottleneck when trying to read the handwriting and go through all of those manual tickets and manually enter that data. The other challenge that a lot of customers face with that is by the time the person entering the data realizes that someone made a mistake on one of their count tickets, or you can't read their handwriting, or they accidentally counted the wrong thing, they've moved on. The operators that were counting have moved on to a different area, to a different product. And when they're counting so many things throughout the day, they can't remember what they did in that specific spot. So it really causes havoc trying to figure out how to resolve that issue that you found with that manual paper count ticket as well. When you move to barcoding, you really take that full duplicate data entry process totally out of the picture. And that way, the operators can simply scan the stock code, the lot number, and the quantity that's counted. And all of this data from the different operators or teams out there is being fed directly into the SYSPRO stock take system. Now, it's not adjusting inventory at this point in time. It just means that no one has to read those count tickets and manually enter them into the system later. It also means that if there's an error with what somebody's counting, if they count the wrong thing, if they're counting something they're not supposed to be counting, the barcode system is going to alert them right then and there, keeping that mistake from getting downstream. So often an example you see with this is if they try to scan a lot number that's not in SYSPRO, the system's going to stop them right then and there, so that way they can involve who they need to involve to make a decision on what to do in terms of next steps with that. So the first step as you start looking at a project like this to go digital in your warehouse or automate your warehouse is really assessing the different needs within your organization. And this includes considering not only the processes and goals or challenges of your warehouse, but also the needs of operations, manufacturing, as well as IT. They all tie back into this project and will play different parts within the project as well. So let's take a quick look at each of these individually. So the first one, which is the most common that comes to mind, is going to be your warehouse or inventory manager. As you're planning to go digital, the warehouse process is one that's very important to identify those specific challenges or problems within inventory that you're really looking to solve. You know, the most common one that you're going to see is knowing where your inventory is at and how much do we have on hand. I think that's the most general concept that everybody's looking to solve. But also from an inventory manager perspective, you might be looking to get more instant visibility. So that way the front office is in quarter, knows what's happening. You might be just looking to prevent mispicks or improve your inventory accuracy, or you're looking to become more organized within your warehouse. So that way you don't have people running around looking for product, wanting to make sure that it's organized well and people know where things are at. Those are all some of the things that a warehouse manager is really going to be looking for in a solution to help guide them in that picking of a process. Another area consider taking it up a level is operations. We often hear from the operations managers that they need to see what's really happening in the warehouse so they can help identify where to improve efficiency. It's important to really determine those specific operational goals that help guide them there. So one of the things that they're often looking for is, where do I see where our time is being spent? How do I report on that? How do I get my front office and my warehouse on the same page so that way they're all running towards the same goal? How do I use automation to enforce standard operating procedures? That's a big part of the process, is identifying those SOPs. Also, the other big one is, how do I just reduce the inventory errors so at the end of the year we're not writing off a ton of inventory? Those are some of the key things that an operations manager is going to be looking for a solution to help them do within their process evaluation as well. Moving on to the production manager, they have a lot of the similar goals as well, but they're thinking about it more from the strict needs of production and how do they build products competitively, accurately, and on time. In their evaluation process, they're going to be really looking to identify things like ensuring that the right materials are being issued into jobs, making sure that the efficiency and quality of those finished goods is really at their top line, and also just identifying how to guide people as to what to work on and when. You might have paper processes for identifying that as well. If you're looking to improve your costing or understanding your labor hours for job, those are some of the other things that production managers might be looking to accomplish with a digital solution. So last but not least is IT perspective of this project. IT managers are going to be concerned with, how do we keep systems up to date in less time? So when they're looking and evaluating a system, some of the things that they're going to be considering is, how long is the system going to take to get up and running? How does the system maintain its compatibility with our SYSPRO ERP system? How easy is it to keep the system up to date or make sure that everything's reliable? How can it help us improve our data integrity with SYSPRO? Those are some of the things that IT is really going to be focused on when they start looking at evaluating different solutions. With that being said, we're just going to pause for a quick second here before we get into barcodes and labels a little more. We want to do a quick poll just to get a better understanding of where our attendees today are at in terms of barcoding their warehouse. Would you mind going ahead and launching that? Perfect. We'll give you guys just about 20 or 30 seconds here to answer that poll and get those answers in, and then we can talk a little bit about where everyone's at today and tie that in. Give everyone maybe 10 more seconds or so here. All right. So if we take a look at the results, it looks like everybody's a little bit across the board, and either we haven't started barcoding at all yet, or we've got almost everything within our warehouse barcoded. So it's really interesting. As we sort of look at the people that maybe haven't barcoded, we can kind of talk a little bit in our next slides about how we can help get you there and some of the first steps to take to get barcoded with your warehouse. So, all right. So now that we've sort of assessed all of the different basic goals of the organization, the next step is really evaluating the processes within the warehouse and identifying, choosing what to barcode and how to barcode it. We frequently get asked the question, what does it look like to move to go digital or paperless system? And honestly, it really starts with moving away from using paper to record the physical transactions that are going to get entered later into the ERP. That's the number one step. And what that means is instead of the warehouse operator using the piece of paper to record what they're going to use a mobile device to record the transactions with barcode scanning. This way, inventory is going to be updated in the ERP system right when they perform that transaction. Some of the different documents or papers that you can expect to sort of automate are going to be things like your stock take count tickets, your pick slips, your job travelers or your work orders that you're writing down materials being issued on, your POs that you're writing down what was received on. Those are some of the things that you'll be looking to automate. Now, a lot of times there's fear in that statement of going paperless too for some people because it's a big change. But when we talk about this project, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to drive all of your processes from a completely paperless workflow. For example, you may still want to print your pick slips that are going to go to the floor to tell operators what sales orders to pick. But what the difference really is the operator is going to scan the sales order document to know what to pick. They're going to pick the lines by scanning, and those quantities and lot numbers are going to be updated in SYSPRO rather than writing down what they actually picked on that pick slip that gets handed into somebody at a later point in time or goes out to that customer. Now we make that a real-time solution that's going to update the ERP in real time as well. So once you've chosen what to barcode, you need to start you need to set up your labels and start creating these standard processes. The one that's most important steps to achieve when you're going to get more inventory accuracy is really utilizing those barcodes. So as we mentioned, it looks like a big portion of you maybe haven't even started barcoding your warehouse yet. One of the most important things is really determining if you've created, determining what specific steps you need in your barcodes to make it as efficient as possible. So as we're looking at that, the first step in the process is to define the data that's going to be required for your labels. So what information do you need to collect or display internally or externally as products are shipped to customers? So the most common examples are going to be things like stock code descriptions, your lot numbers, your quantities. That's going to be your most common items that are on your barcode, on your labels, along with other things as well. The next step in defining your label format is how is the data going to be organized on your label? What size label do you need to use? Which pieces of data need to be barcoded versus just displayed in your label? Are you planning to use a 1D barcode or a 2D barcode? With today's 2D barcodes, you can have multiple pieces of data in a single barcode. For example, you can have the stock code, the lot number, and the quantity all within one barcode. And this simplifies and expedites the scanning process, so that way the operator can scan one barcode and capture all three pieces of information in a single scan. All of these factors play a role in deciding how you're going to format those labels. The third step is really developing a standard process of how and when to label your inventory. So such as how to label items when they're received in and how to label existing inventory within your warehouse that you might not have labels on yet today. So there's a couple of different perspectives. We could do it in a batch perspective, or we could relabel all of the inventory. For example, one of the customers that I've worked with, they relabeled all of their inventory during their stock take process. That way it was one time and everything was done, and they were ready to move forward with the next steps. Garrett, I know you worked with a customer as well. You took a little bit different approach with that customer on how you labeled their warehouse. Do you want to just talk them through what you did?
Yes, absolutely. Kind of to lay the groundwork, this customer is currently a lot traceable food producer. So we followed these 3 steps quite strictly, actually. Is we determined what was important to put on their labels. It was important for them to have the stock code, description, expiry dates, and lot numbers. And they also wanted to have the PO number that this material came in on. So once we defined what was going to go on those labels, we took the time to understand what process are we going to go through and start labeling. We determined that the PO receipt station was going to be a great place to do that, as incoming raw materials that aren't labeled can now be applied once it's received. They also had the project of moving from a non-multiple bin location to multiple bins within their SYSPRO environment. So relabeling their existing material we did during a bin transfer, as material was being moved from the location to its new existing bin location. We were able to apply labels, and we also wanted to not lose sight of applying labels and barcodes to the actual physical location that these products exist in. So those might just be some things to keep in mind as you go through your barcoding journey.
So we talk about labeling your warehouse really consistently is key to efficiency. So I kind of glossed over this, but for those of you who are new to barcoding, I want to take a step back and talk about the difference between 1D and 2D barcodes in case that didn't sink in. But in the 1D example, that's going to be on the left there. You'll notice that there's a barcode for the stock code and there's a barcode for the lot number. So in this situation, the operator would have to scan both barcodes to perform the transaction. So for example, they would scan the stock code, and then they would also scan the lot number individually to perform that. In the 2D example on the right, you'll notice that that barcode actually contains the stock code, lot number, and quantity all within that single barcode. So in this situation, the operator would scan the 2D barcode and use something like Smart Scan, which is what we call it in riteScan, and all 3 pieces of data would be captured at once, really just saving that user time so they only have to scan something once to capture 3 pieces of data versus scanning something twice. The 2D barcodes are also going to help you with saving space on the label. They're more efficient on what you can fit in there. And the scanners nowadays are actually able to detect those barcodes much faster and at different distances more easily. So now that we've sort of talked about all of the steps to label your products and the processes that go around that, a couple of other things to think about are checking for gaps in your processes. So make sure that your standard processes are going to include how to keep products labeled accurately, such as when to relabel products or reprint damaged labels. How are your users going to handle those situations? The other thing, don't forget to label your locations. So that's your warehouses and your bins. Sometimes people overlook that process of barcoding those bin locations. The next sort of process is to really test those transactions and print those labels and use them in a real environment to understand how your scanners work with those labels, how they scan in your specific environment at the different distances. And next, train your team. Make sure you have a document that helps guide your team through what to do in certain situations and how to perform those transactions. And after that, the next step is really to go live and start labeling your products and take those next steps for preparing yourself for warehouse automation. With that being said, I'm going to transition it over to Garrett, who's actually going to take you through a demo to show you what do these transactions look like in a solution like riteScan, and what does going digital really look like as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. I will just pull up our screen here. And can you see it? Just give me a word if you can. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to touch on a few different aspects here as we go through from a demo and really cover some of the things that Ryan just spoke about. First, one thing I want to mention with riteScan, it is a web-based and mobily optimized system or platform, giving you full device flexibility in the different devices that you might want to either explore or deploy it to out on your warehouse floor. It might work on a Zebra device, a Android device, your PC, a tablet, iPhone, iPad, really, again, giving you that full device flexibility. RiteScan speaks to SYSPRO using the E.NET business objects, so that's how I'm connecting to our SYSPRO environment. That's what allows for the real-time transfer of data and giving you that speed and efficiency of knowing exactly what's happening out there on your warehouse floor. I'm using my SYSPRO credentials to sign in. It is very tightly integrated. I will log in and it will bring me to my dashboard or my home screen. This home screen is a great place as a supervisor to really just get an understanding of exactly kind of what's happening out there on that floor. How many transactions are happening today or this week or even within this specific SYSPRO company. It even gives me the flexibility to pin my most commonly used modules to the top for maybe those end users really dialed into just using order picking or PO receiving, making it so they don't have to muddle through a bunch of different modules to find what they need. RiteScan 8 does have a full SQL database behind it, which allows for a lot of transactional reporting. So at any moment's notice, you can view all of the transactional data that's happening, really giving you that insight to say what's happening out on that floor and giving you the visibility to make a decision if you see something might not be so fit. Now, I might be a newer employee and I'm trying to really just understand where exactly is my inventory. So what I can do on the fly is go into my stock items here and just try to understand exactly how much I have on hand for a specific item within specific locations. So I'll select, or I can scan. You might hear a little barcode scanner turning on, scan my stock code that I'm looking to explore and learn more about, and it's going to show me the warehouses that this item exists in and the what's on hand versus what's available and what's on order. Now, if you're a multiple bin company within SYSPRO, you can even see the warehouse and bin combination that this specific item exists on. Now, if you're looking to track material from, say, a pallet perspective, RiteScan has a feature called pallet tracking, which really gives you more granularity as to where inventory exists, and you can dive in to see, does this item and what pallet does it exist on in its specific inventory locations. Now, I will switch over to a different screen here, and we'll show you what this is going to look like on a handheld device as we do a stock take. Stock take is where some of our customers really see their fastest return on investment with RiteScan, is really taking the time to do that data collection piece. So what a user is going to do is they're going to say, I scan my warehouse that I'm counting in, my bin locations. If I'm not necessarily sure what item I'm going to be looking for, I can do a quick query to understand and show me all the items that are in this specific stock take. Now I will scan the stock code that I'm counting. So if I scan that item, it's going to ask me for a specific quantity for it that's associated. And now for a lot traceable item, I can do a query, or I could scan that barcode that is on that specific item. I can post. Now there's an error. Now this is what's going to happen if I am scanning an item that might not be in the stock take system today. So that's really where a lot of this validation comes into play, where I'm forcing those users to scan and make sure we're using that system as the brain and the brawn behind everything, where they can really streamline what they're doing. So what I'll do is go back in, remove this item, scan the correct item that is within this stock take, apply my quantity that's associated, and I can post. One thing to see here on the screen is that reference field is populated with the employee ID. That gives you a great audit trail. So when you're looking in SYSPRO stock take system and you're saying, well, who is doing these specific counts for these items? I can see that Garrett Lenson did that specific item, and I can go and speak to him to say, hey, there was an issue with this quantity. It doesn't necessarily match our existing quantity that was there before. Now, the benefit with the stock take system is that it does not update your inventory in real time. It just goes into your stock take system where you can either do a query on it or run your variance reports before it's accepted. Now we'll switch over and do a quick bin transfer, doing these movements within our warehouse to really help streamline this process. As you can see, pallets are turned on here, but we'll switch that. and we're going to do a different mode, a batch mode. This is one of the newer features within RiteScan, being able to do these movements and streamline that process as I'm going through different locations, selecting what items out of the list or that need to be moved from maybe an overstock location to its pick-based location. So what a user is going to do is they'll take their barcode scanner, scan the item that they want to move, they'll apply the location that they're pulling it from, the stock item, their quantity, let's say a quantity of 5, and the new bin location that this item is going to exist in. And now I can hit save, and it just adds it to the list here. I can go through, add my next item, again, apply those same fields. There's many different ways of doing this. You can add defaults to make things easier if you're always pulling out of the same warehouse or the same bin to really kind of help streamline that user's workflow. Select bin location, and I can save, and now I can post. Now, as a user, I'm trying to rely on the system to help guide me through the process. So there might be certain things that come up that you can set as a supervisor to help them with that. For example, here's a message that comes up. There's a stock take in progress for stock code A102 in warehouse N. Are you sure you want to continue? If I have a physical inventory or a stock take that's going, I really don't want my employees to be moving that material from that location because that's going to throw off my inventory counts at that time and cause those discrepancies. I don't know if that user has counted that location and that quantity yet, or if they have not. So we try to avoid it altogether. Now, those are set to a warn, disallow, allow, giving you that full flexibility of how you want your warehouse to be run. All right, now I'll close out of here and say I just had a truck that just hit my dock, and now I need to go through and receive this specific purchase order and receive these items into my inventory. Now, it's very common to see riteScan deployed on multiple different devices. As you can see, that was running on an MC9300, and now this is running on a Windows PC. So depending on what transaction you're looking to accomplish, you can really fit it to any workflow. Now, as this material is being offloaded onto that truck, it's hitting my floor, I need to now receive it into inventory in real time. There's no more paper data lag of me writing down this information on a piece of paper, handing it into the back office. They have to read my handwriting, understand what's happening here, enter it into SYSPRO at that time. This all happens here instead of it could have been 3 hours later, 4 hours later, a day later, really taking that lag out of the system. So one thing you can always work on with certain suppliers is getting barcodes on that documentation. Some might have it already, but it's a great way to really manage the change that might be happening if you're moving off of those paper processes. Moving from paper, they still feel it, they can see it, they understand it, and they can use the system to do that validation. So with riteScan, you're going to see multiple different fields. With here, I can either scan it, I can select it out of the list, I can enter it physically by typing. Now, your validation really does come from scanning. So what I'm going to do is scan my stock code that I need to receive in. I have my quantity, my warehouse, my bin location, my note reference fields, and I can select complete and save. Now that line is being saved, and I can either receive it in and move to the next line. So we'll do that. And for example, I can select this out of that list. My quantity to be received in is 10, the warehouse that it's going to, and the bin location that it's going to. Apply note, that same reference field as I mentioned earlier, and select complete and save. Now I can post. Now, as mentioned earlier, when going through that project with that company that was looking at labeling, this is one of those areas that we started doing it in, was the PO receipt. As you can see here, this is the information that we were looking to capture. We were looking to capture a PO number, the stock code, the description, and on this specific example, I have the supplier from SYSPRO as well. Really just trying to identify what information is going to be important to me. Now, in certain cases, you might be lot traceable or have serialized items. You can also capture that information here as well and place it as a label. So now I will hit print. It's printing labels for each line item that's existing. Print successful, fantastic. I hear the little printer going burp, burp, burp on the right-hand side of me, take those labels, apply it to the product, and now it's ready to be put away in its inventory location. So now I have raw material that's existing within my warehouse, and it needs to be put together into a job. So what I can do here is drop these columns, and I can go into work in progress. So there's two different ways of issuing material from inventory. We can look at our specific issue or our kit issue. So what we'll do is go into job issue here. We're going to issue one material. I might have a work order or a traveler that's going along with this specific job and follows it all the way through. So you can work with the SYSPRO rep to get that information barcoded on there as well, again, to help with that change management. So now I'm also going to use then riteScan to do that validation that I am picking the correct items off the shelf and going to allocate them to WIP. So I'm going through, I scan my location or scan my item. I'm now going to apply my quantity and say, yep, this allocation is complete, and I can post. So now what I've done is I've gone to that physical location, picked that item off the shelf, brought it over. It's now staged and allocated to WIP and basically reserved so that nobody else can take it. And we're not causing those different inventory discrepancies by saying, no, I want that piece or I want that piece. Now that's a specific issue. Now we can look at a kit issue by doing all of that material allocation at one time. So I scan my same job traveler. I apply the quantity that I'm going to make. I can even filter based off the operation. I might have a very large list of bill of materials, say 100 quantities or 100 different items that need to be issued. I can filter upon that operation to say what needs to be issued now versus what can be issued later to really kind of help filter it out and make it easier for the end user. So I'll hit operation 1, and now I can see my remaining items that need to be issued. So I can either scan them, I can select them out of the list, whatever is going to be giving that user the best workflow to be the most efficient. Apply my bin location that this material is coming from, and now I can hit next. I'm reviewing that each item is good to go. I have my quantities, my warehouses, everything looks good, and now I can post. Great, post successful. All that inventory has now been allocated to WIP. It's being assembled, put on the line, being washed, whatever your steps might be. Now, as that product is done, being assembled, manufactured, whatever it might be, and it's coming off that line, I can go to my job receipt here. Now, job receipt is something that you might see labels also very commonly being produced. So I will scan that same traveler that might have been coming through with all that material. My quantity fills in from my quantity to make. I apply the warehouse that it's going to, my bin location, and I scan my bin location, or I can always default that information as well, and I can hit complete and post. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very common area for labels to be printed. Anytime inventory is hitting my, say, finished goods or raw materials, anytime I have inventory coming in is a great place to apply labels. So here I have my stock code, description, the job number, and the quantity. Print all, and now that label's being produced and being applied to my product. All right, now to one of the more diverse modules within riteScan here. We'll go to order picking. Order picking really gives you the flexibility to match any sort of workflow that you might have. And gives you many different ways of, say, here's a single order to pick. We can also create batch items to pick, really giving you that flexibility of distributing what's happening with these specific sales orders. So for me as an end user, I can go through and hit scan my specific pick list item if I'm still printing them. If you're printing those pick lists out, they can use that to guide themselves, or what they can do is use riteScan fully and use filters to really hone in on what information they're looking to capture or what sales orders are available to pick. So I scan my pick list. I'm fairly new to this, so I want to scan it, make sure I'm doing everything right. We'll switch back over here to a device so you can see that. So now this is what it's going to look like from a device setting. So as I'm moving through, I need to go to the physical locations to pick and scan and validate that I'm picking the correct item. So if I pick an item that's currently not on this order, it's going to tell me that stock code B100 is not found on order. Well, that's telling me that as a user, I must have scanned or picked the wrong item. So what do I need to do? All right, well, I can take that information with it, and now I can select the correct item. So let's scan my A112. It's now going to pull up my quantity to validate. I'm picking out a ship today. You can pick out a back order, reserves unallocated, really giving you all the different flexibilities or modes that you might be picking out of today. So I'll hit pick. And now I can go and pick the next line item. Say I'm going to scan my A102 and pick. Those items have already been hard allocated. Now, if there is any sort of scenario where I need to make an adjustment, I can go to my picks list, make that adjustment on the fly, really before it all happens. We want to validate, make sure that we're doing these correct items before it really hits our ERP system.
Hey, Garrett, one
Now I
second.
can complete.
Oh,
And once
you got there already.
I can go on to my next sales order that might need to be picked. All
Hey,
right.
Garrett, sorry to
Now, some
jump in
things you
there.
might have noticed is with that SQL database, we've really built in some of the reporting functionality, the dashboards, and that's always something that we would be willing to explore later with you guys as well, once we have more time. So without further ado, I will hand it back over to Ryan and we will continue.
Perfect. Can you hear me all right, Garrett?
All right. Ryan?
All right. Looks like my audio isn't working as expected. Can you hear me?
Ryan, we can hear you, Ryan.
Oh, okay. Garrett just can't hear me. That's okay. No
That's okay.
Well, it sounds good. So I did want to just touch on one question too while we were still looking at that last order picking. One of the questions that came in was, are you able to speak about ZPick and post-band walk capabilities and how to implement this in bin maintenance and order lines ultimately? So just touching on that question while it's fresh in our minds, basically in that last pick screen, one of the things that you can do is you can bring in those different sequences that you assign to the bins to basically order them on what's the most efficient manner. And when the lines get assigned those bin locations, we order based on that sequence. Or alphanumeric is a common, easy starting point for people. So that way, when those operators are going through that picking process of those lines, they can just sort it by that, and it's going to guide up bin by bin, utilizing that sequence. So other than that, so when we sort of talk about wrapping all of this up and what can you expect for results when implementing a solution, helping you to go digital in your warehouse, one of the most important elements of business today is having access to visibility and real-time information. Moving to an automated solution helps provide more accurate real-time inventory information. And this is also going to help you reduce that paperwork that's floating around your warehouse waiting to be entered into the ERP system. All of these improvements are really, from a bottom line standpoint, helping you streamline your warehouse operations, which improves your inventory accuracy. So when you migrate from a paper-based process to a mobile warehouse solution to the goal of going paperless, you're going to see some of those results, like increasing the time that it takes or decreasing the time that it takes to perform those stock takes, preventing those mispicks that are going out the door from an order picking standpoint, being able to pick more efficiently because you can use things like bins and routes to help guide those operators on how to pick effectively. Those are some of the things that you can expect to see as you really improve your processes and implement a solution like this. One of the customers that we recently implemented riteScan 8 at was a company called Yeti Cycles. And they really improved their picking process specifically for their e-commerce business. They were growing very rapidly from an e-commerce perspective, and the picking processes that they had in place just weren't efficient. Utilizing something like riteScan was really helping them increase their accuracy of picking the correct items, as well as the correct quantities that were going out on those orders. And they were easily able to train their users and get them to adopt that solution. So those are some of the things you can expect to see as you look to implement a solution. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over for questions here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan and Garrett. That was great. If you've got any questions, feel free to submit them in the questions panel on the GoToWebinar console. We do have a couple questions that came in actually before the webinar and some during, so I'll just start with some of those. The first question we got was about whether this technology is cost effective for small companies, say with only 2 warehouse staff.
Great question. Yes, RiteScan is very cost effective and it has multiple different package options that could be beneficial to smaller organizations that are still interested in looking at RiteScan to help automate their inventory.
Perfect. And Robert had a question, which is there a way to flag back orders and allocated SKUs as they are being received?
If I can take that one. If I understand the question correctly, you might be using something where a PO is directly linked to a sales order, if I understand it correctly. And if I don't, please feel free to reach out and we can talk about it in a deeper sense as well. But if those are linked, you can bring in some of that data, and then when the purchase order receipt happens through RiteScan and it's received in, it'll automatically tie it back to that sales order, taking it from back order to ship as that item's received in and allocated to the sales order.
Okay, perfect. Okay, another question here. What is the best way to track incoming inventory by delivery dates?
I can take that one. That's a great question. Within RiteScan, you can create filters in those columns to help identify specific POs that might be coming in for different delivery dates, helping streamline what information that user is going to be viewing.
Okay, awesome. So Roger had a question earlier on in the webinar. He says that their inventory is a combination of cartons and can also be a combination of cartons and pieces. Is this easily handled through barcoding?
That's a good question. We'd have to dive into further what cartons they're using, but one thing that might be a useful feature would be something that we call pallet tracking. And if I'm understanding it correctly, let me know. But pallet tracking, it's a way to use a single identifier to say, let's track this carton versus all the material that's in this specific carton. And you can also track material based off of, say, a specific item as well, using product labels versus a pallet ID or a license plate. There's a lot of people or customers within our base that are doing some sort of fashion like that today.
The other thing you can utilize for that is the different units of measure can be turned on within RiteScan to allow people to handle those situations differently. So if you allow them to modify the unit of measure from the standard stocking unit of measure, they can do that with cartons versus pieces.
Okay, great. Ed is asking if you can make inventory adjustments through the scanner.
Yes, you can make inventory adjustments through the scanner. Those inventory adjustments would include like a quantity adjustment, expense issues, miscellaneous receipts. Those are very common modules that some employees use. One benefit with RiteScan is you can give that to specific users or in a different group, such as a supervisor's role might have that permission. Some companies don't always give their end users the ability to make those transactions just because it can create such an effect on your inventory. But yes, you can do so.
Got it. That's great. Another question here. Can you batch jobs or work orders to post material either in a range or a list of orders?
So one of the things that Oh, go ahead, Garrett.
Go ahead.
You take it.
Yeah, so one of the things it's a newer feature within riteScan is something that we're calling WIP batch management. That's one thing that we allow to a user or supervisor to select multiple different jobs out of a list to say, all right, these are jobs that are going to be in production today, and you can select them and say, I want all this material issued, giving a user like a pick slip to say, go pick all these items for these specific jobs.
Okay, great. Okay, Roger had another question here. So he says, we do stock take for slow moving stock prior to the actual stock take date. If there is any activity after we take that count, how do we adjust the stock take quantity to override the original quantity?
So there's actually two ways of performing a stock take, or two methods that you can utilize: the replace versus increase. So in that situation, what you could utilize is the replace to replace what was previously counted for that specific stock item that might have been modified.
Okay, perfect. And just two more questions, it looks like. So how does riteScan work with SYSPRO?
riteScan works with SYSPRO, again, via the E.NET business objects, which ensures a tight, seamless integration to SYSPRO. And we can connect to all SYSPRO versions, which allows us to have full flexibility. But it does connect via E.NET and gives you that full-time visibility or real-time visibility.
Awesome. And there's one last question on hardware requirements. What type of devices can riteScan run on?
riteScan can run on a multitude of different devices, whether if it's going to be a Windows PC, a Zebra scanner, Honeywell scanner, iPad, iPhone. Being that it's a web-based application, it can really be deployed to any sort of device, giving you that full flexibility or full range. So.
Awesome. Well, it looks like there's lots of options there for sure. Well, I think that's it, the end of our questions, and we're coming up to the top of the hour. So thanks again so much, Garrett and Ryan. It was a great demo, really good information.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. So if you have any questions or you'd like to see or learn more about riteScan and what it can do, please feel free to reach out to either Ryan or Garrett at riteSOFT or to your SYSPRO account manager. Thanks again for your time, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.